so much, Jamie, for joining me here today. Um, and before we begin, our talk, our conversation about all those things related to food, to body image, I would like to ask you if that would be okay, if you can just say a couple of things about yourself in the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for having me. I love this conversation. I love chatting with other people passionate about this conversation and all these topics. Yeah, a little bit about myself. So, my name is Jamie, and I am located in the United States, specifically in Colorado. And I am an outpatient dietitian who works with eating disorders and body image. And our practice is side-by-side nutrition. We are now a group practice, so we have 6 individuals who are all also very passionate about working with eating disorders and providing accessible care to those with eating disorders, helping to advocate for better care for eating disorders, more inclusive care for eating disorders. And yeah, we're all really happy to be doing what we're doing. I feel like we were all made for this, and so I'm just really excited to dive into the conversation with you today, and hopefully shed some light on some topics, maybe bust some myths, maybe get some turning for people watching, and yeah, just continue the conversation, because that's what it's all about, to just end the stigma around it and get some knowledge out there in conversation. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I really do hope, some people, whoever clicks on that video, will benefit somehow from this talk, because I feel like, especially in Poland, so the country which I'm from, this topic is not necessarily tackled by many people. And I will just quickly say to whoever is watching how I came across your page. So basically, 3 years ago, when I myself when I committed to like full recovery, that recovery for me does not mean the absence of the symptoms, but it means this freedom from food obsession, freedom from, constantly centering my attention around body image, what I have eaten today, how do I look, does that flatter my figure, and so on and so on. Then I started to kind of unpack all of these prejudices, stereotypes, but also like the whole issue of dieting and nutrition in general. So this is how I came across Jamie's page. And I will definitely provide all the links down below if people want to check out your social media, because I would really recommend that, definitely. So we're gonna talk about like 2 things today, 2 major things. One of which I was thinking about, the impacts of weight stigma. So from what I know of, in October, we were celebrating quote unquote weight stigma awareness week.
Yep.
And I would like to start with just basic question with you. What are the impacts of weight stigma?
Definitely. The biggest impact is just the shame around what people feel when they experience weight stigma at the doctor's office. It really keeps people away from going to get the treatment that they deserve. And yeah, so it keeps them from taking care of themselves, because they are concerned about what they might experience when going to the doctor and being shamed for their weight. In addition, we started chatting before we got on. We started chatting here and recording, but in the eating disorder field too, for those who are struggling with an eating disorder due to weight stigma, that access to care and the way the diagnoses are set with the BMI, people are unable to get that care that they need. So weight stigma is extremely detrimental to people's health. So there's a lot of different impacts from it, but that's overall like what weight stigma is. It's And I pulled the definition here, and there's a few different websites that are really helpful for explaining the impact of weight stigma. Just as I said, it poses a significant risk to significant threat to psychological and physical health. And it can be documented as a significant risk factor for depression, body dissatisfaction, and low self-esteem. Those who experience it experience an increased dissatisfaction with their body, and are more likely to experience eating disorder symptoms, or disordered eating symptoms, are more likely to have a diagnosis for an eating disorder. Specifically, they're finding in the research too for binge eating disorder, and they really experience it at the doctors most often, and we might go into that. But then they can experience it within their family, within the media, and just socially. And I think it just really leads to people feeling very shameful around their body, leading to these behaviors that are manipulative and not compassionate and distrusting of their relationship with their body. So it's a huge problem, and I think all of the clinicians in this field, and even more so clients, people who are struggling with eating disorders, we're swimming upstream against this, and it makes recovery just so much harder with all of this false information out there about weight science and what is health and nutrition. And it's just, we're trying to break that down and make things better for our clients and fight back against this. But it's a really tough battle, and I think we'll be fighting it for a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, when you mentioned that it can be especially influential while recovering, the thing that I remember, the thing that I do remember, like personally, is everything is fine when it comes to recovery until you start to gain weight, certain point. Like, it is okay to recover. It is okay to give yourself a full permission to eat and to fully recover, in the sense that obtain certain body mass, right? But only to a certain extent, because afterwards there's prejudices that somehow, if you cross certain BMI, then you suddenly become unhealthy.
Yep.
I think this is also very present in recovery, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. I talk about that a lot, and it makes recovery super confusing, where we're being told, yes, we need to be eating all foods. We need to have a good relationship with all food. We need to get our body back to a place where it's, when we were nourishing it properly, it's at a healthy place. But it's always with that little caveat of you can do this until then, and then you have to kind of play around with the eating disorder. You kind of have to listen to the eating disorder, right? Like, you recover up, you can trust your body and do these things that we want you to do to recover up to a certain point. And then you got to be careful, which is extremely confusing. I think it keeps people in their eating disorder for so much longer, or confused about what recovery is, or what a healthy relationship is. And it just keeps them super distrusting. And I think that many people can share in that experience of having throughout recovery, being confused with that. And I know for me in my recovery, that was something that was very confusing. I wasn't at a BMI that would be considered for anorexia. And I don't know if you want to bleep out diagnoses, but for the eating disorder that I was struggling with. And it was confusing because you're hearing from that is being promoted, you are being encouraged to manipulate your weight and to eat quote unquote healthy, and it's just being promoted. So it's very confusing when you feel bad about it, but it's not concerning due to your weight or X, Y, or Z. So I think it just keeps people in their disorder for a lot longer. And you're not fully free of the eating disorder tendencies or the eating disorder voice until you come to a relationship with food and body that's trusting and compassionate. And that is a mutual relationship between you and your body. It's not you versus your body. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of learning to become comfortable with where your body's supposed to be and respect it no matter where it's supposed to be, despite what the eating disorder, how that it might feel about that. So you can slowly come to a place of acceptance and self-compassion with it. And that's where your choices are coming from a self-compassionate place for your whole body, mind, soul. And so it's very confusing, recovering in a disordered world.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And also, I would argue, but you need to correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously I'm not a specialist. But
No, yeah.
sometimes I feel like certain tools certain tools that which would normally be called as disordered for people with, with the diagnosis of anorexia nervosa and BMI 17, let's say. Sometimes they are promoted for the people whose BMI, let's say, is 28.
Mm-hmm.
So there is this huge contradiction, right? That we do not promote one method, one set of tools, how to recover, like fully recover, how to give ourselves full permission to eat, to move our body, etc., to all the people from the whole range of BMIs and etc. But we do specify on like one group, and then we are quite prejudiced towards the other.
Yeah, 100%. So first, there's a couple of things you said I just jotted down, so make sure we talk about. But you, first of all, being a specialist, I would never say I love this. This is where I devote my time and my research and my, so I definitely say I would specialize in it. But at the same time, everyone's unique experience, you have a lot to say on the topic too. You have, been through this journey on your own as well. So I want to make sure I say that, because I am always learning. I learn so much from my clients. Everyone's journey is so unique and different. But what you spoke to is exactly correct, and a huge problem within the eating disorder field and just within our world, which is those things that are being those things that are not okay for people in smaller bodies, restriction or not having all foods fit or trying to lose weight, or all of those things that we are saying is not okay for people in smaller bodies. We're promoting for people in larger bodies. We're promoting those behaviors, which is, yeah, just like you said, is a huge problem, super confusing, and is just inappropriate, not inclusive, and yeah, there's just so many problems with it. That topic just makes me extremely frustrated, especially just working with these clients, and how confusing it is to them to form a compassionate relationship with these things when they're hearing these things being promoted on social media and from doctors, from the $1 billion diet culture industry. It's super confusing, and I'm really lucky to be able to be an advocate for those clients, but it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I think it's really ironic that like so many of us, we do still believe that we can actually encourage someone, but by making them hate their body. Like for some people, and especially, according to like my own experience, it is massively seen within the like medical professionals. um like if we know the negative side effects of weight stigma, if we know that it actually triggers people to do exactly the opposite thing of what we want to achieve by encouraging them, quote unquote, right? That you should like look at yourself. The problems of your whole world are because of how you look. For example, your poor health condition, your lack of, I don't know, connection, belonging to other people, whatever we invent, right? Whatever we invent, I feel like sometimes people will use it as an encouragement to tell their sometimes even loved ones that, look, maybe this is like your problem. But if we know that what it does is the completely opposite thing, that it actually lowers self-esteem, right? And it triggers all of these behaviors that are associated with negative relationship with food and one's trust with their body, etc. Why do we still keep on, having this like conversation?
I think that's a very sad answer to that, is that I think that's the system that we're in. That's what doctors are taught. That's how they're educated. That is the research they're shown. And although there's a ton of research about weight stigma and a ton of research about, about health at every size, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term. You might be. Yeah. And so and size diversity, although there's a ton of research on that, I don't think that's what's being presented or educated to doctors. And unfortunately, it's just so built into our system that I think doctors, and I know doctors who would say this because I speak with doctors, we try to educate doctors all the time. Clients or our doctor or our clients' doctors, or just doctors' offices, that we are trying to build awareness around this for better care. And it is, when you're telling this to doctors, they are very much like, they're blown away, or they don't understand, because that's totally opposite of what they were being taught, and what they're also hearing in diet culture and what they grew up with. So if you take all of those experiences and thoughts and education and how it's formed, and then you come at it from, hey, let's look at weight stigma, let's look at size diversity, are we looking at this? It's like a totally new, wild concept to them. And if you think about it for yourself too, in your recovery, and for myself in my recovery, it takes a lot of like internal and work and self-education and time devoted to that. It's not just one conversation, right? It's many conversations, a lot of work. So although some doctors definitely are shifting their focus and understanding this and educating other doctors as well, there's a lot to be done. So in that little bit of time, doctors just, that's what they're taught to judge off of, BMI. That's just, they have a little bit of time with their patients, and they're also reimbursed with that too. There's also, again, systems in place there. So it's again,
big
something
business,
a
right?
big, yes, a huge business. And so it's something we're swimming upstream against. But that's something that's, aside from the doctor's office, you just mentioned, shame fueling a lot of these behaviors. And that's something that we talk a lot about with clients, because I think a huge part of recovery is forming a more self-compassionate relationship with yourself, because shame it fuels all of this, right? That's a huge factor in the in continuing those behaviors. There's and we can link this if you're interested, but there's a really wonderful psychologist who talks a lot about how eating disorders are a disorder of shame and anxiety. And I couldn't agree more, because that's a huge piece I bring into a lot of sessions and talk a lot about, is opening up to this idea of self-compassion. But like you said, people think that shame can be used in a good way. That's, it gets us things. But when we really look at it, where does shame ultimately bring us, and how does it play a huge role in the eating disorder? So just side note, I think that's super important.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think, bringing shame, like the idea of shame, into this conversation is definitely is like that is exactly what we need to be doing, because the whole weight stigma and kind of like blaming an individual only, like purely on how they look, their health condition, etc. It is all connected to shame, definitely. But I wanted to like ask for some practical tips, let's say.
Yeah.
So what can we, what can we say if we are like truly heartwarmingly concerned of one's health, let's say, and I'm not talking here about, let's say they look obese or something like that. I'm just saying in general, for example, at concerned of one's health. Mm, how can we articulate ourselves? How can we have this conversation, but in a compassionate way, in the empathetic way, non-judgmental but also very supportive?
Hmm. Yeah, so that's a really hard question actually, because it's so individualized of how you would come at a conversation like this. Is this a child? Is this a friend? Is this person asking for that? What is raising those concerns? I guess if you're seeing people use certain behaviors, so if you can provide like more specifics around that, because I think it's really
Okay,
hard to.
role play.
What'd you say?
Role play.
Yes, if we can
Yeah,
role
we're
play,
gonna
because
have a role play.
yeah.
I'm thinking about it. So I definitely agree. We will, use different approach to while speaking to someone who is recovering, for example, from an eating disorder. But let's say we just mean like a family member who honestly we don't know anything about their relationship with food. We don't know anything about their relationship with their body. Like he seems to be eating fine or whatever whenever we observe how he's doing, everything looks good, but it's just we are still concerned. We don't have much of a context, let's say.
Yeah. If we don't have much of a context, I would be wondering why we would be concerned. Like, what is raising those red flags? Do we have some biases ourselves or prejudice ourselves about this individual and their behaviors? Are we, where are we drawing those conclusions? And then also, what are our intentions and behind the conversation, and what control do we have? Because really what I would say is, if health is a value for someone, which it isn't for everyone, but if health is a value for someone, that's number one. I think it's inappropriate to be putting our beliefs on someone else to say, hey, this is what you need to do. You need to be concerned with this, and this. If they're not like asking for that or interested in that, I think would just push them in the opposite direction. Honestly, I think someone has to, on their health journey, it needs to be self-motivated and from a place of compassion, because I think the two things that fuel, there's so much that goes into health. For one, like it's very much genetic. Yes, there's a behavior component, but it's genetic, and it's also a huge impact on health is socioeconomic status, and that is, there's a really cool pie chart out there that shows this. But I think it's like 60-70% is socioeconomic status, 30% is genetics, behaviors is like falls into 20 to 30%. And so when we think about, when we're just thinking about health, we have to think about access to food, access to education, like nutrition education, and so that's just huge, and understanding like the control that someone has. And so then when we think about the behaviors and having a conversation with someone about behaviors around health, behaviors are going to be greatly impacted by someone's mental health, and their relationship with themselves and how they're talking to themselves. So when it comes to like nutrition and exercise and mental health, all those things, emotional health, spiritual health, all of that, it's just super complicated. So I think it's an ongoing conversation that someone has to want to start having, and it needs to be fueled from a self-compassionate place to move in the right direction. So that was a lot, and a lot of tangents and a lot of different pieces in there. But I think that's the reason I say that, is because that is that is what I would say to that question, that it's so much harder than that, to think about coming to someone else and like almost speaking to them rather than listening to them when
Mhm.
they come to you,
Mhm.
is very, yeah, is something to consider, um, for sure. And when we're talking about, if we're just talking from a parent or caregiver child role, it would be, modeling these things, modeling a self-compassionate relationship with it, not shaming, to help them build that relationship with food and body and exercise and acceptance around their body and what they were given. And yeah, so that's why I had a hard time like answering that question. Hopefully that provided some answers there,
Yeah.
but let me know
Yeah.
if you have any questions.
I wanted to I wanted to tackle like another big topic that I prepared for us today,
Yeah.
which is exercise. Like, um, how do you think how strict regimes of working out, how our relationship with exercise from the childhood can influence our relationship with working out, with physical activity altogether, because that's not how we want to call, physical activity, obviously not only working out at the gym, but just moving our body in a gentle way altogether. How can those things, correlate and then show up when we are adults, let's say?
I think that your relationship with exercise can start very intuitively, joyfully, from a place of like this feels good, this is fun. I'm doing this because I appreciate my body. It feels good to move my body. And again, that's even a privileged way of speaking. Not everyone gets to do that depending on their socioeconomic status and the safety of their environment. So I just want to point that out too. But and then I think along the way, just like with intuitive nature of food, intuitive nature with exercise, and even your intuitive relationship with like being kind and compassionate to yourself and trusting of yourself, that is slowly starts to be shaped by external factors and what you're preached about with diet culture, and it turns into more of like this responsibility. It should look this way. It gets confusing. It should look this way. It should look this way. And then of course body image comes into play too, and it becomes more centered around not like appreciation of your body and how like movement is brings all of these wonderful things and is joyful, and it can look however you want, but it becomes more rules based and becomes more of a responsibility to manipulate and control your body, and that's just what we are taught. So I think it's just like with your relationship with food, with your relationship with exercise, we have to get back to that self-compassionate, trusting place with it, which is scary. Like in both of those cases, it's scary. You're going against the grain, but we have to. Yeah, that's something definitely to take a look at, and something I chat a lot about with my clients, in doing that exposure work of stopping that exercise that is like punishing and rules based and not enjoyable and like rigid, and coming back to a place of like what feels good for me and thinking about the intentions behind it. Really thinking of, why are you doing this movement? Why are you doing this movement that looks like this? Why are you doing it for that long? Are you checking in with your body? Are you listening to your body? Are you appropriately fueling it for that exercise? Like, is this movement respectful to your body? And there's 4 pillars that I talk a lot about with my clients, and I brought it up because it's also intermingled with your relationship with food and body and exercise and body image specifically, which I love talking about. But so these are the four. In order for a movement to be good for your mind, body, and soul, it's best to be based upon these four components. It's used to rejuvenate the body, not exhaust or deplete it. It enhances the mind-body connection and coordination, doesn't confuse or dysregulate it, alleviates mental and physical stress, doesn't contribute or exacerbate the stress, provides genuine enjoyment and pleasure, not pain and punitive. So and I think that very much describes like a child's relationship with movement. It's intuitive, it's fun. When they're tired, they rest. When they want to stop and they need to refuel, they stop and refuel. They're doing exercise that they enjoy, like dancing and swimming and all of that. And not saying that there's any right way to move, but the intentions behind it really matter. And if it's fueled from shame or self-compassion really matters, just like it does with your relationship with food and your relationship with body image.
Obviously, you know, when I came across your page, you like put it all together in like a idea of joyful movement, and I really enjoy that, because obviously that's not a like specific approach. That's not you need to be doing X, Y, and Z X times a week to burn this amount of calories, but instead try to like remind yourself maybe of what was bringing you joy when you were little, when you were a child. And also, I think sport, because this is, I think, a very controversial topic as well sometimes, because I feel like, you know, sports in general is perfect arena for building your discipline, for building your character, for building your like skills and stamina, just like that. And I think you can push yourself to get to certain physical performance that you want to achieve, but at the same time it is possible to achieve that while excluding the topics such as, you know, the appearance of my body, or the calories burned throughout the workout. What would you say about this approach?
Yeah.
Let's call it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you're thinking of the intentions behind it and how it's impacting the rest of your life and the rest of your relationships with all of these things. And so like absolutely, if having goals and like because it's a genuine like passion for you or something you want to see what your body can do, wonderful. But you know, that our body is doing that for us. We have to respect it to be able to again form that mutual relationship with it where we are not where we're helping it to get to that place. And if you're shaming it, if you're trying to manipulate your body in a way or manipulate food, then we're out of that intention of trying to see what our body can do and respecting it to help it get there, and now into like a punishing it. Especially when you're talking about, you know, pushing it into, you know, whether it's like building muscle or trying to, you know, push yourself within a certain sport or athletic, that takes respecting it with proper rest and proper nourishment. And so if we get into this place where the intentions become skewed and we're no longer have those intentions, but now we are in these different set of intentions, more shameful, distrusting intentions, it's yeah, we're no longer on the path that we're trying, the original the goal that we had for ourselves. And they're not one and the same. Sports performance and body manipulation, they're two separate things. They're just, again, culture puts them together a lot of the time, and specifically diet culture and with that workout culture and wellness culture that can be very toxic. So
where do you think there is this line to be drawn? As, okay, I have to admit I might have a problem. Like it's not healthy for me anymore. And I'm talking here as much as, you know, about the regular people and the athletes. So let's, you know, maybe focus for now of the regular people who do exercise as well. But it's just where this relationship with exercise becomes unhealthy? What are the red flags, let's say?
Yeah. The red flags would be when it's, I would say, number one, it's becoming like not enjoyable. It's starting to feel like a responsibility. It's starting to bring on stress. So when you feel like, if I don't do this movement, I am going to be stressed out about what I can eat today, or what might happen to my body, and it starts to build stress, and you more so do the movement to avoid the stress, rather than, when movement is to relieve stress, you do the movement to not have the stress. So when it's impacting, also other red flags are when it's impacting other parts of your life. So it's impacting, like, you can't, when a friend says, hey, let's go get ice cream, or let's hang out, and you're just like, no, I have to do this exercise. I really want to go hang out with you, but I want to do this exercise. And that might look different if you're having some goals and you're like, oh, that sounds awesome, I totally want to, let me I want, like, I had this intention of doing this exercise and staying on that plan so I can achieve this sports performance, and then let's go, but it doesn't bring much stress. And if you're not able to do that, it's like, okay, that's fine, but it's not bringing on a ton of stress. So it's really individualized to every single person. But if it's starting to stress you out to not do that, if it's impacting other assets of your life, socially, emotionally, psychologically, if it's starting to interfere with that, if it's becoming this like rigid plan of like, oh, I did this amount and I have to get to this amount, even though I'm tired, and I have to, and it's more like impulsive. If you are feeling not good, if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling drained, signs of like overexercise and not properly nourishing your body, or not taking recovery time. So if it becomes shameful in any way, so it's really kind of the same thing as like with food. If it's feeling rigid and rule based and shame based, and you have negative self-talk around it, and you can't be flexible, like, those are red flags to consider, the way your exercise is looking, and what the intentions are. So
Okay, so like you mentioned the red flags, but
yeah.
what I'm thinking right now is, what if, because it very often starts very innocent, like in the beginning, for example, those, first we like sign up to the gym, let's say, it will be like a completely made up story, maybe a very stereotypical one, but like we sign up for a gym and it all, seems so innocent for us, because it brings us joy, like plenty of joy in the beginning. But then we like start to get better at this, like at certain, I don't know, activities whatsoever, and we do start to follow, for example, some uh, people on social media. We start to like occupy ourselves with not necessarily our performance, our physical performance, but how we look because of that performance. So it is, I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but I think that a very interesting thing that I think we all can see in all the gyms, almost on all the gyms on a planet, is that they all have mirrors. From every angle they capture you, from every angle. For example, in a lockers room, when you get ready, when you change, etc., it captures your every angle. So I think it's like I do a bit of marketing, so I'm also like aware of this thing, that it just grabs your attention constantly, to constantly compare yourself after workout to how you looked yesterday, or like after the last workout, and so on and so on. And I wanted to like ask you for some tips for me, everyone, and people who are hopefully watching this, how we can check in with ourselves, how we can navigate this relationship with exercise before even the red flags start to pop up.
Yeah. So you mentioned a lot of things there, and some things I would add. So first of all, understanding that marketing that you just described, there's a reason that's there. So just like having that education of what that the purpose of that, what those that is a money making, that is marketing for these different products or companies, and they're using shame comparison to fuel their profit. So really understanding that role, to be able to like separate from it and be like, okay, yeah, I get what that's doing there. Just to understand it rather than
Yeah.
taking in that and holding it close to your heart and saying, this means this for me, to be able to separate and understand the role of what that's doing. Same with like, yeah, diet culture, of understanding why that's there. It makes a lot of money. It has returning customers because it's, people fail, and have to keep coming back to these diets, and that makes them very wealthy, and they fuel off of like the shame of not being able to keep up with this super restrictive diet, or manipulate your body in a way that your body doesn't want to be manipulated, just naturally. So just understanding that and having that education. I would say the environment is big, and you chatted a little bit about the environment with the mirrors. Maybe checking on a gym that doesn't have the mirrors, because body checking is huge. If you are associating your exercise with your body, and in little ways that you don't even realize, like when you're at the gym and you're just looking in the mirrors or you're working out looking in the mirrors, and then you're criticizing your body, you're not thinking about like how I'm getting stronger, or I can do this thing I wasn't able to do, or like appreciation for your body and doing those things. You're constantly associating it with that. And body checking is huge. It's just pulling those relationship of of that together rather than separating and being able to like internally look at it. So your environment, I wonder if there's, my dog's in the background, I don't know if you can hear that. So yeah. So that environment is just is big. So maybe there's a gym that has a more positive environment around that, and has, maybe pictures of all different body sizes up. And this is, few and far between. There's not a lot of them. So checking in with your own mental health and seeing how it's affecting you. Maybe it's not time for a gym. Maybe you're creating boundaries around the gym at that point, and you're doing some exercises at home or outside, or places that are conducive for your mental health, until you're like in a stronger place to be at the gym. And I know you said it coming from like many different people, like people who are coming at it and they're like, I just want to do this thing, but then they're being bombarded with these messages too, and it maybe turns disordered. So again, checking in with yourself, like your intentions behind why you're going, and how the things that you're taking in are affecting you. It's always helpful to work with a non-diet dietitian around that. And then also, even the people at the gym and that you're working out with, how are they talking about their exercise? Are they talking about like, oh, I can't wait until I can run this amount, or I can lift this amount, or I can swim this amount, to reach that goal? Or are they talking about like, oh, I have to do this to burn off my lunch, or I have to, my body's disgusting, I need to, do this at the gym? Like, how are they speaking? Because that's going to directly impact you. And that's not a very supportive environment. And then social media, like that would be a great thing if you check who you're following. Are you following one type of body? Are you following people who are shaming you for, the only bad workout is a missed workout, or whatever, like those kind of messages? Like what messages are you subconsciously, not without even knowing, taking in, holding it as truth and holding it close to your heart? We need to get other messages in. We need to get a lot of different body types, of a lot of different, exercise influencers who are promoting all different bodies, listening to your body, to create that helpful environment. So if you just, awareness is huge. And so when you say like, well, what should you be aware of, or what can you do? I would say remain aware, check in with yourself, how these things are affecting you, and like have that conversation, because you don't know what you don't know. You're not raising awareness around these things. You're just going with the flow. You're picking these things up instead of and holding them close to your heart rather than just like stepping over them. So awareness is just really big there.
Yeah. Well, that was a lot to take in,
Yeah.
but I'm really glad we had this conversation, and I got so many, you know, new points and new tips that I can actually put into practice in my own life, in my
Yeah,
own
good.
relationship with food and movements and so on. And I do really hope that people have found, you know, that very beneficial and enjoyable to watch, to listen to as well. So as for a goodbye to the people, to the people who are watching this, I will
Mhm.
just say that again. I will provide all the links to like social media pages of Jamie. I know that you also have a YouTube channel,
Mhm.
so I will leave all the links down below. And thank you so much for, you know, clicking on that video, and thank you so much, Jamie, for joining me at 8 a.m. your time.
Yeah.
Here is 6 p.m. And to
Yeah.
be fair, I completely, the thing that I did, I can share this with the people, is just I Googled, you know, like Denver time zone. No, I Googled Colorado time zone, and it was like -7 from the time zone that I am in. But then I obviously I didn't realize that Colorado is quite big,
Yeah.
right? So isn't it? So Denver was actually like in the time zone -8 hours from my time zone. So it's not that I was waiting 1 hour for you here, but it's just I sent you a link and everything an hour before because I totally messed up. But
Oh
yeah,
man, I didn't realize that until now. Yeah, no,
is it?
time zones are really confusing, and I'm glad we can work it out. I'm a morning person, so I'm all about chatting in the morning, so totally okay
Glad.
with me.
I'm
I'm
a
up at 5.
natural.
Yeah,
So
I'm up
so
at 5 ready
that
to
that
talk.
is good. That is good.
Yeah,
There is this
yeah,
you know, a time zone difference between us, so that we can hopefully one day have this chat again. So
yeah. I was just
thank
gonna
you
say that.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was just
and
gonna
if
say that whenever you're wanting to talk again, hopefully these are such big topics, so I hope I'm able to do them justice, and they're so individualized and there's so much to say. And that's one of my things where I'm just like, there's so much to talk about. How do I condense this in like a helpful answer? Like what a little, so
oh
hopefully that
you
was good.
definitely help.
Good.
So thank you so much again for, you know, joining me, and hopefully we'll, you know, speak very soon again.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be lovely. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you so much.